he spoke about a better European Union. And asked, what does it mean, a better European Union? A more efficient one, a more powerful one, more global player, more democratic one, more united one. This could be a sort of reflection which I want to put to my panelists, but not only that reflection, because, of course, everyone wants in the future a better European Union. What could this mean? I think we will have 1 hour of a really amazing panel here, and I'm glad to welcome our panelists. You see here Lidia Pereira, who was with us already this morning, your president. And then we have Konstantinos Kyriakis. He is a Kyranakis. Oh, Kyranakis, who is a member of the Greek Parliament, right? So welcome, and Christodoulos, or better say Chris. And Christodoulos Ioannou, who is a member of the European Community of the Regions and Larnaka City Councilor. Then we should have in connection with us online, I don't know if they are already connected. This seems not to be the case. When they will be connected, yeah, they are. Here they are. We welcome Sara Skyttedal, who is a member of the European Parliament. Good afternoon. And Ruben
Hello.
Alexander,
Thank you.
who is the CDU International Secretary. Hallo und herzlich willkommen. So our panel is structured in the same way like this morning. We have sort of 5 minutes for each to introduce in the theme, to say what is for them a future European Union, especially from the perspective of young people. And so let us begin with Lidia, who is the woman on this panel in presence and who is also the first on the list. Please, Lidia.
Thank you, Marcus, and welcome to all our guests online and here in presence. Kostas, Chris, Sara, and Ruben, thank you so much for joining and for accepting our invitation for this YEPP Council meeting. I will not speak as much as I did in the morning, because I think we have to take the time to be as provocative and have a fruitful debate on what is the role of the youth on the conference. And while we were having lunch, we were finding out that there's not so much awareness to the Conference on the Future of Europe, even when we are talking about high-level profiles within our countries. So my question, maybe to kick off, is the Conference on the Future of Europe a waste of time? Yes or no? So I don't know if Kostas, Chris, Sara, Ruben, please tell us, what do you think about this?
Konstantinos, it is a waste of time.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll begin by by being clear on this, but I will also explain why. After I thank our hosts for inviting us, it's a great honor to be here in the oldest republic of Europe, San Marino. In all our years, Chris and Sara, in all our years in YEPP, we have never managed to do an event in San Marino, so I'm very happy to be here. It's a great place and with great weather today, right? So the truth is that in all this European space, and especially in the Brussels bubble, always, as far as I can remember doing politics, especially international politics, we always had, this kind of programs and initiatives that the European Commission would kickstart in order to convince citizens about the importance of the European Union itself. The truth is, we don't really have to do that, because people, through the information age, they're able to understand whether or not Europe is functioning, and if they have a say and their voice is heard at the European level. And the truth is that most of the times it's not. So our recommendation back in the days was that the people who represent the nation states, who are the elected leaders, the prime ministers or the presidents, who once a month or once every 2 months they meet in the EU summit, they should be the ones who really shape what the European Union is. This is how people will feel as European citizens. This is how people will be able to shape European politics through their elected leaders. And this is how their leaders will be able to explain back to their countries, back to their citizens, back to their voters, what they're doing for them in order for their lives to get better. So one proposal, for example, was to synchronize the national elections. So every country has an election normally every 4 years. Of course, in some countries this is more stable. In some countries we have early elections. But if the European leaders would agree that there would be a common date for all leaders to be elected at the same time in their countries, then the politics of the European summit would make much more sense. Because what we see, and this was always very interesting and very problematic, is that, for example, if Germany has an election, from Germany here, yeah, we have friends from Germany. So Germany is the largest country in Europe. And also financially, it's helping more than everyone else. So if Germany has elections, everything stops. Because everybody is waiting for the outcome of the German election, and then now we're waiting for the outcome of the negotiations to see who is going to be in government, who's going to be the chancellor, and then everything will start. This is a problem for Europe, and I'm not talking about Germany only. I'm talking about every country that uses its national elections as, I wouldn't say an excuse, because it's an actual situation. I mean, elections in politics is important. But every time a big country has an election, everything at the EU summit stops. So we need a stronger European Council, a stronger body that will make sense to the voters who are sending their leaders to the European Council in order to have the European Union as we imagined it. All these conferences like the one, Conference on the Future of Europe, first of all, it's not known. I'm a member of parliament and perhaps I've heard about it once. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it serves. And I don't have any voter in my constituency that was invited to participate in any of this in any of these events. And I think we'll continue like this. Thank you.
Thank you for this provocative statement, which is good for our discussion and maybe also for your questions. One could say this could be the moment in which we discover that the national principle has to be overcome, no? Because such conferences and such conferences which feel us together, one Europe, it should be promoted better, maybe. Yeah, this could be the case. But I don't know what Chris is thinking about that.
So, yeah, I wouldn't say that it's completely irrelevant, to be perfectly honest with you, or that it's not useful, but I will agree with you that it's not as efficient as perhaps those who designed it dreamt it would be, or as effective, although to be fair, it's not over yet, so we cannot judge on its effectiveness, but from what we see, it doesn't seem to be as effective as we would have hoped when it was being designed. And I would say that me, as well as Kostas, would be in a position, even though I know Lidia agrees as well, but we would be in a position to understand this, because when you exit, as you mentioned before, I'm a member of the Committee of the Regions, which is the European institution that brings together the members of local government on a European level. So while being a European institution, at the same time, it's one which allows us to spend the absolute majority of our time in our constituencies and not in Brussels, which gives you a different point of view outside the Brussels bubble. And this institution, in my opinion, is unique to that, which is very important. So I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but like every time, I would like to see the European institutions come together and, we're asking, what does the youth want? What do Europeans want? What do we get from whether it's the Conference of Europe or the results of a Eurobarometer or whatever that is. And it seems like, to me, that European politicians have come to a point where you need a list of, what is it that the people want, so that then, okay, we can do that and show that we're effective. And we're always on the lookout from the perspective of the European politicians. We're always on the lookout as to, okay, what is it that we need? And in my opinion, this pulls them back from being effective, because I think that this is not politics. And of course, politics is determined by the will of the people, because they themselves are the ones who vote and bring you to power or not. But what is it that the people want? If we ask everyone right now, I think it wouldn't be as specific as, we want a job or this or the other. People want things to work. People want us, whatever our role is in whichever institution, to do our job so they can live in prosperity, they can live safely, they can live free in their societies. And this is done not following a checklist. This is done not getting conclusions from conferences and polls solely. This is done by being a politician and doing whatever you think is best to put this continent forward. So my disagreement with the Conference of Europe is its focus on bringing about specific things, while I don't think people expect from us specific things. They expect from us to be bold enough to make things work. And that is where we stop when we're being dependent on always on the results of polls and conferences and opinions. But I wouldn't like to go further than that, because I think it would be interesting to have a debate. So looking forward to it.
May I just add something for...
Yes, and then we have to ask also our two panelists who are connected online. We don't forget you.
I'm going to be very brief, but I just want, before we open the debate, that each and every one of you starts thinking about how many times have you spoken about the Conference on the Future of Europe with your friends.
That's right.
Or with your family, or your colleagues, your teammates. And after that exercise, we will debate about it. So, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, that's right. Also, Chris said a better European Union is one which functions, which let things go, and so on. No? People want that things work. Maybe people in a democracy should also work to participate and to express their own visions. Maybe this is an aspect in which in Europa we should talk, and also the as you say, the fact that this conference is not so known, this should put us the question on which level and on which consciousness is democracy in Europe, at least on a whole European level. But yeah, these are other critical questions. I asked Sara Skyttedal, what does she think if she is as critical as our panelists here in presence, or if from far she can give us a more optimistic view?
Well, thank you for having me. And as my former YEPP colleagues know, I'm maybe not known for being the most optimistic person when it comes to these things. So I think my initial response hearing about the conference was pretty skeptical, especially from the perspective. I have a background as a city councilor, and in that aspect, you normally have these different citizen meetings where you have a dialogue. And my experience is that those meetings, while having a very good, idea from the beginning on how it should be, it's in the end, it's normally attracting people that have a very special interest in a specific issue, and not really as attracting people that reflect the idea of the general voter. However, here in the I'm currently in Strasbourg taking part in the conference, and I know there are some citizens that have been randomly selected. I was just taking part in the migration workshop, and I think it's very clear that there's very little ideas on what is the purpose of this conference, and especially the expected outcome. I can give you an example here in this migration workshop. We just gather up these ministers, MPs, MEPs, and those citizens representatives, and asking them to talk freely about the wide area of migration, something that is very divisive and very polemic. And you have people in the room, everyone from Alternative from Deutschland, and then you have the Greta Thunberg fan from Sweden, and they will not get along and find a deliberative solution on this. So although I think it's a very interesting experiment, I don't think it's pretty well known, and I think in a way, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, because this unclarity on what is the purpose is also maybe an opportunity for people taking part, because I think there are very few people here that knows what they're doing here. So if you do have an idea on what your purpose here is, you might actually get something out of it, because no one else seems to.
Thank you, Sara Skyttedal. Yes, of course. The only fact that we are here says that at least some of young Europeans feel that need to contribute in a certain way. And so I put the question also to Ruben Alexander Schuster.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for this kind invitation. It's always a great pleasure to look into so many familiar and dear faces, knowing each other for a very long time. And it seems, and I'm quite surprised to be honest, that I am probably the only strong supporter of the Conference of Europe, because I see a great potential in what the aim and also the process of the Conference of Europe means for the development of the European idea, of the European vision, but especially also for the youth. Let me explain why. I think what especially the last years have shown, that the idea, that the vision of the identity of Europe is basically always a result of our cultural mentality. And I think we can proudly say that the European Union, as we have it today, is a result of a discussion and a debating culture which goes back to the Greek agora or the Roman forum. And I see the great potential that exactly this sense, this tradition that goes back to centuries and is more or less inevitable when it comes to the fact what is Europe all about, to reinvent, to reuse this great debate and discussion tradition that we have in Europe, to bring it back to the people on local level. And I must say 147,000 participants so far is quite a proud number. And I think the idea of taking the debates that are usually, of course, taking place in parliaments, taking place with people who are elected, with people who are representatives of the people, taking it to those who are not elected, taking it to people who actually don't hold a political position, is a great chance to recheck, to also reinvent the idea what the vision of Europe should be for the future. And I think my dear German colleague Nino Galletti, the representative of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Italy, put it out very well this morning when he said it is basically a great chance also for the role of the youth. And I think we, as a young generation, we should see this Conference of Europe as a starting point for a debate which cannot be stopped after one conference, but as a starting point for a certain series of discussions, for a new mentality, for a new tradition of debate. And I think we should see it as something positive. And then at the end, We can draw the line after 10 years and say, was it an advantage or not? But I'm a great fan of that, and I think we should use this chance as wisely as possible.
Thank you. Konstantinos, Konstantinos, 147,000 participants, and it is a great chance, this conference. These words change something in your opinion about the conference, or would you say it is it is only a utopia instead of a chance?
147,000 people is a very, very small fraction of the EU population. I mean, we can all agree on that, I guess. But to be completely fair, we should ask them if they felt differently about Europe, or if they felt useful as citizens who were given the chance to participate in this conference, and if they felt that their voice would result to a change in the European Union. I'm not one of them. I don't know anyone who was part of this, so I cannot comment. What I know is that this is not the first time we've seen this. I remember the European elections of 2014, when the European commissioners were organizing small town hall meetings all across Europe with citizens, and inviting them to, voice their opinions about the future of Europe again. So we had, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had per country something like 6 or 7 town hall meetings in the citizens' dialogue. Yeah, exactly. So it was a little bit like what's happening now with the Conference for the Future of Europe. Zero impact. Okay, so we've seen this, we've witnessed it as a generation. What I know is that citizens, yes, they want to be heard, but by giving them the chance to just participate in a conference where politicians, and especially Brussels politicians, are repeating the same again and again and again in every election cycle, in every campaign for the European elections, doesn't serve the real purpose of the European Union. We feel as a union because of all these flags. Every participant here has a flag in front of their table. And we're proud of the flag we have in front of us. We're proud to represent our country. We're proud to represent our party sometimes. What I mean is, sometimes it's our party, sometimes it's the country, sometimes it's both. Not to be misunderstood. But the union is the sum of these flags. So as the more power we give to the voices of these flags and the people that are behind it, the stronger the union will be. And the union should focus on the things, the union should do less, but better. If the European Union does less, but it does it better, then the Europeans will feel prouder of this union. So if it's defense or foreign policy, or for example, now that we have the energy crisis, if the European Union manages to buy gas, for example, natural gas, at a lower price, so that EU citizens have access to a lower price of energy, this is a victory for the Union.
Yeah,
the conferences and the dialogues and all of that, we've seen it again and again. It doesn't work.
The question in European Union is, and then also you can also put questions now. I will ask you to bring also your questions from the audience. The problem is if it's only this Europe, because if we have here many flags, no, also in the Convention of the United Nations are many flags. For me, Europe, these are all the flags of Europe, because behind all the flags there is a community of values, of the idea of human dignity, of a common culture, which maybe in other gatherings where you have the flags, it does not exist. So maybe it's more than only the sum. For having lower prices, we also can have commercial.
Without them,
unions.
there is no union. We have to understand this. The Brussels politicians, the people who are elected in the European Commission, who are appointed, who are sent to the European Parliament, they wouldn't exist without these flags. Lidia is representing Portugal. Sara is representing Sweden. Okay, Ruben is representing Germany. Without these flags, the union doesn't exist. And I'm not saying we should scrap the union. I'm a pro-European
No,
person.
I understand. Yeah, yeah.
In the past, I was also a federalist. Then I changed my mind. But what I'm trying to say is that if we
it's clear.
If we manage to make the people behind these flags to feel that they are part of the process, part of the decisions, then they will be able to go back to their countries and defend this decision. This doesn't happen now.
The problem is how to do that. And you said before there is we have only these gatherings which don't produce any result. My question to Chris is: are there any alternatives to gatherings like that for bringing ahead Europe? But first, I want to hear Sara Skyttedal to the problem of the many nations in Europe, and if it is also according to you, if you can say that Europe is only the sum of the singular nations, and the nations should be the primary actors, if I understood you well, that realize Europe and not the Union. Sara, and then Chris.
Sorry, I didn't really understand your question.
I took the provocation from Konstantinos saying, is Europe only the sum of the singular nations, so that the nations are the actors and the nations should realize the European process, should be the actors who work for Europe, if I understood you well. Okay. What is the relationship between the Union and the nation states?
No, isn't the slogan "United in diversity"? And I think there's a lot in this. And I think many of the strengths of the European Union is the diverse culture backgrounds, and I mean the interest shown from abroad and from tourists when they come to Europe is how the vast diversity of food cultures from to you know, everything. It's that is what makes us strong, and I think we need to protect that. And in many ways, I do agree with Kostas, and I'm very happy to hear that he has left the Federalist camp. You're welcome to the good side. No, but I wanted to just make a point as well when it comes to this conference, since I'm now part of the plenary representing the European Parliament. I think there's, I mean, there's a lot of signs saying that this is just a way of established politicians trying to get support for reforms already in place. For instance, as I mentioned, I'm part of the migration working group, and I understood there were over 400 suggestions from citizens online on this topic, probably from both sides. However, during our working group, there's no one had time to sum up and categorize those suggestions. So we just started off from scratch. So in the end, there's just 40 people, with a vast majority of very experienced politicians from both the national and the European level. And the citizens' perspective was lost, except for maybe the 4 or 5 people in the room that actually represented the citizens. So I think if it really, the outcome of this conference is supposed to reflect the citizens' ideas and not just end up with suggestions on institutional reforms that I think is very uninterested from most citizens in Europe. So I think we need to do something about how the basic structure of this is done.
Okay, thank you. Chris, I anticipated the question to you.
Thank you. So I have to say, and hopefully I don't make Sara cringe again, but I'm still on the Federalist camp, to be perfectly honest with you. And I do not believe that Europe should do less better. I think it's not that simple. I think Europe, and the thing is, you know, now maybe we're going into somewhere else which is really relevant. What is Europe? You know, is Europe the institutions? Is Europe the member states? Is it the citizens? The thing is that it's all of these things together. So I think that what we should improve, and I believe we're on the right track to doing so, maybe with the usual Brussels bureaucracy and slow pace, but I think we're on the right track to doing so, is how all of these actors that we have mentioned work better together. I think that's where the problem lies, not whether one institution or member state or body does more or less. And I think that Europe is the center in the world for soft power. This is what we do best. I really believe that, and I think that is evident with what we do and how we operate on the global stage. And the truth is that the way the European Union is structured today, as governed by the treaties that we have today, it couldn't be really much more than that, with the power and structure really that it has now. So I think that, I mean, coming back to the conference for the future of Europe, the thing that, as I said, I'm not against it. I'm just afraid that, as Kostas mentioned, with other initiatives, I remember the citizens' dialogues were Commissioner Reding's portfolio, and it was a very interesting initiative, and it was one where a lot of effort was put and money, of course, to initiate these dialogues everywhere. And this is, I guess, a pass to Lidia and Sara, perhaps. We have a lot of programs in the European Union that are called these soft programs. So we give a lot of money to bring people together, whether it is for the Conference of Europe or whether it is, like in my municipality, we have many European funded programs where we investigate on how the circular economy could be improved in our local communities, in cooperation always with other regions across the European Union. Many other examples, recycling and everything. And they are soft programs in the sense that they come to conclusions, they're not hard programs that result to investment in a particular process or equipment or something that our constituents can actually utilize and feel its effectiveness. So all these soft programs, and this is where I come to Lidia and Sara, with all respect to Ruben, is, we have thousands of these reports. Like, where do they end up? What is happening? Do you, as a member of the European Parliament, do you come across all these different, like thousands of conclusions that we have from the programs bring together experts and citizens and NGOs, and we debate and debate again and debate again, and supposedly that should lead to a concrete program or an improvement. And I often do wonder, and it's the same about the Conference of Europe, where are all of these conclusions going to lead? Did you ever come across a report that you could utilize in order to implement a hard, practical, tangible initiative?
This is a radical provocation, Lidia. I think it was a provocation for Lidia, also for Ruben Schuster. So I want to hear both. And then I have another question for you. Then we switch to another theme, because we don't only want to talk why this conference, but also what is our future, and also listen to you. Lidia.
Yeah, well, we do receive reports, and in particular from the European Court of Auditors, so we have access to that. What I don't think is that there's much public interest in knowing the outcomes of those programs. But I think it is, I don't know, one of the criticisms, for example, on public policy in Portugal is that there is no evaluation or assessment of the EU funded programs in the country. So we don't know, but this is a national problem. But it's just a concrete example of eventually something that then might expand to other locations in Europe. So, and what we cannot measure or what we cannot assess, we cannot improve, right? So I understand Chris's point of view. I would say that there's maybe a little the information doesn't get to the public in general. But that leads me to what was discussed in the previous panel, which was about the EU propaganda, right? There is no EU propaganda. We don't know what the EU is doing. Like sometimes we visit countries, cities, we see the European flag alongside with the city municipality logo, informing them about the inauguration of a certain, I don't know, infrastructure or whatever. But it's only at the local level. Who are the people in the inauguration of those infrastructures or those projects? There's no one from the European Union, right? I'm not saying that there has to be one, but people have to know that there is the EU in their lives on a day-to-day basis. And I still feel like when we are in crisis, if we look back at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember in Portugal people asking, but where is the EU? We need support, we need masks, we need medical protective equipment. Where is the EU? People remembered the EU. But then people remember also the EU because of only the bad things, or because things have to be more in line and there has to be some discipline on public finances and so on. And then the national governments, the national politicians blame Brussels, the bureaucrats of Brussels, for the need to comply with certain rules, because we are in the same club, so we have to fulfill certain rules. So, you know, this is one of the problems that I think the conference should address. Like, one of the outcomes is like, okay, but people have to feel that there is the EU in their lives. And just I disagree a bit with Kostas. I'm a little reluctant on certain pillars of the conference, but I still think that this conference, if it's and I kind of agree with what Ruben suggested in the beginning, like this conference is going to come to an end in April next year, but it doesn't have to be a closed discussion. It can continue throughout time, because I also think it might be the opportunity to develop a better or a more European sentiment. There is a lot of skepticism around Europe. Myself, when I introduce myself to anyone, or if anyone asks me, well, what nationality are you from? Well, I'm Portuguese, I'm European. And I don't know how to be one without the other, because I was born already in Europe, so I'm basically made in Europe. But this is just to say that it should also touch upon the problems of populism, of growing skepticism that definitely are not good for the European project.
Of course, democracy is always also an ongoing process, not only finding immediate solutions. So democracy is a little bit the both things together. That's why sometimes it's so difficult. One very brief question with the one answer, Constance. Should the nation, Rubens, and then I go to Rubens. Should the nation states cede more sovereignty to Europe, transfer more sovereignty to Europe, in your vision? Yes or not? Then we go to Rubens. It's not.
It depends on the issue.
Okay.
I mean,
okay,
if we're talking
in a dynamic way.
It's really the question on the issue. For example, if we're talking about a common European defense policy,
okay,
it's a different debate than taxation.
Okay.
So it depends on the issue. I cannot give you a yes or no answer.
Defending yes, taxation no. You say.
Sorry?
For defense, yes. For taxation, no, you would say.
At the state of the European Union today, on both, no.
Okay, on both. No.
But it's a different debate.
Not too much sovereignty to Europe. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we should go one step back. I totally agree with what Lidia said, and I think we all agree on, everyone on this panel, that there is a lack of visibility, a lack of understanding of what Europe and especially the European Union is doing. And I think also the Conference of Europe is somehow symptomatic, and also the criticism that we are witnessing is symptomatic. And I would like to raise the question, is it not also our task as national politicians, as parties on national level, on local levels, to not only blame Brussels for not being visible enough, for not doing enough, so to say, PR work to be present everywhere, to explain it to every single citizen. Isn't it also our duty, our task, and so to say, our responsibility to explain Europe, even if we are not, so to say, European politicians? I think this is something we should ask ourselves very self-critically, and also ask ourselves, what can we do to promote a stronger debate on European level? And I think it is also the question, what can we do to strengthen the process of a Conference of Europe, to make it more visible, to have more people engaging? And I agree with the people and with my fellow panelists that the visibility and the strength, the knowledge about the conference is still not enough. So we cannot be satisfied where we are now, but isn't it more the matter that all of us need to come together and engage to make it a success? And that's also our duty. Now to the second question, more European serenity. I totally agree with what Konstantinos just said. I think it depends on the subject. I think that, for example, if we look at defense politics, at foreign politics, at security politics, we live in the 21st century, and all the crises that are surrounding us can only be solved through Europe and on a European level. So yes, here we definitely need a more European reply. But of course, and I totally agree, if it comes to other issues, we need to check very carefully what is the right idea. And we shouldn't forget that we have a principle of subsidiarity, which is exactly asking this question again and again, which level we should use or solve basically which problems.
Yeah, the principle of subsidiarity is really important. I agree with you. I also agree with both of you that, of course, it depends on the topics, which sovereignty. But perhaps if we have the nation states in Europe, it will be very difficult to have a consensus in which topics to give more sovereignty to Europe or which not. But this is really a difficult debate. I want to hear a little for a moment, then we speak. Maybe two opinions from our audience. If someone wants, yes, I see here. Yeah, two maybe. Yeah, I saw two hands. If there three, let's take these three opinions and then we will return to our panel.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Regina Frieser from Germany for Junge Union. Hi to Berlin. I have heard a little controversy on the panel today, but we've been talking also about, and I wholeheartedly agree with what was said in the prior panel, I've heard nothing concrete. Here goes my question. We heard about the high numbers that supposedly have contributed to the Conference of Future of Europe. If I may read out some numbers to you, though. What is most people that have contributed? They are between 25 and 39 years old, over 60% self-identified male, and almost 50% of them hold a university degree. So in my opinion, that's Brussels staffers. So this is not diversity, even though I wholeheartedly agree as well that citizens' participation, getting into dialogue, I agree with you, Ruben, it's a paradigm shift. We haven't done this in the European Union outside of individual forces of parliamentarians before. And I also think actually that citizen participation and listening to diverse opinions from different groups of people are core values of the new conservatism that we need in all of our parties, also on a nation level, not only on a European level. But this is not diversity, and this is not listening to citizens, in my opinion. And also, of course, it's a paradigm shift now. And there might be a new track, a new path that we're following, but with all due respect, the house is on fire. There's countries that have left the European Union or that are going to leave the European Union. There's only a couple of years left, talking about climate change. So we don't have the time to slowly settle into this new paradigm shift. So my question is, what concretely can we do with the time left until April, until the end of this first experiment, in order to make the most of the time that we have now, because there's not much time left? Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Well, hello, my name is Marcus. I'm representing Junge ÖVP from Austria, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the two panels before. My question connects to the one from Regina, and it's about consensus, meaning consensus also with other youth organizations and other youth parties. How do you, for example, communicate and cooperate with other organizations and parties? And what would be your suggestion for us? Because I'm firmly convinced that in order to meet the challenges that are in front of us, the green transition, the digital transition, we will need a broad consensus also as the youth. What's your suggestion on that, and what can we do as well? Thank you.
Okay, and the third question, and okay.
Hi, I think there also might have been someone else, not sure. Anywho, I'm Andrei from New Generation SLS from Slovenia. And we actually talked about the conference for the future of Europe within our party. Specifically, it was called the long-term vision for rural areas within the conception and constituency of rural development for the future of Europe. And we kind of passed out, a few documents and so on throughout our local committees. Would you like to participate? And here, I think this isn't just the ruthless practicality of the Slovenian farmer who doesn't really, care about highbrow politics, but like more in general, people didn't really know what this was about. Like they asked us, will this like result in more grants, more help for digitalization? And the thing is, because the wording was often so vague that we couldn't really provide any concrete answers. So it all kind of petered out, sadly, within our organization. We could have tried harder. This is true. This isn't pure. This is also partly our fault. But not to go too long here. I think that there should have been a more clear, like short to medium term vision for the Conference of the Future of Europe. Because when we're talking about very long term effects, very often people who aren't that connected to the whole European sphere, who are in the real economy, don't like particularly care. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. So yeah, I would just kind of like to stress that point. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, if there's one question left, I think, yeah, we can hear also the last question, and then we have enough time for a last controversial round, maybe.
Well, can you hear me? Okay, I'm Edelmira Ferri from Nuevas Generaciones, Spain, like one of the current vice presidents of YEPP, actually. And I'm gonna try to be very brief, but actually I was part of a delegation in Strasbourg. I think it was like 2 weekends ago. And actually we talked a lot about the Conference of Europe. And one of the guys that was present there with me in the delegation, I think that he made an important point. He addressed to the audience and he said, okay, so here we are with all these politicians now in Strasbourg or Brussels. And you are asking us all the time, what do we want? But you don't let us tell us what we need. And I think that that's something very important, that we are always expecting them to ask us what we need, but we never raise our voice to really ask really ask what we want. So maybe instead of just searching, or putting the blame on someone else, because I agree with Ruben that sometimes, we don't really see the efforts coming from Brussels, and we seek like guiltiness, we seek whose fault it is in this case, but I think it should be like a shared work, actually, coming from Brussels, but also coming for us. Because in my case, as an international secretary now of my organization and current vice president of YEPP, now I'm trying to organize as many things as I can to show our youth, in my country especially, what the meaning of the Conference of Europe really is. So it is on us to spread the word. And also, I think that we can expect a lot of work coming from them, but it is our time to accelerate and also work. So I think it's shared work and less complain and more effort.
Very good. Okay, so I see the last. Okay, quick, and then we have 2 minutes for each to answer for each of the panelists, because we close at 15:45.
Hi, Paula from Ireland, from Young Fine Gael. we actually did something a few years. We took it upon ourselves to write the Young Fine Gael Future of Europe policy document. And then we did another iteration of it. So we have all the questions answered before this ever started. But one part that we put in our policy paper, and it very much so speaks to what Edelmira just said, we wrote in a section, what can Ireland do? Because we felt it was important when we were going to talk to the senior people within our party. There's no point saying like, this is for some person in Brussels to pick up and it's their job. It's very much so a domestic competence that like you have to take some action at home and put your money where your mouth is. So I really agree with your colleague who brought up that point. It's a very important one that we can often lose sight of, that responsibility rests in domestic capitals as well as in Brussels.
Okay, this was a good round, I think, of replies, of questions. I see that our panel was inspiring for you. Maybe Sara Skyttedal. Let's begin with our panelists from far.
Yeah, I think I may have had a too negative perspective earlier, so I would like to finish on a more positive note in a way. I think in a way we really can take the full use of this conference if we use the citizens' perspective in the right way. And I think as politicians representing the YEPP, we should really make sure that we do that. And one area, for instance, is we're discussing green transition. Many of the colleagues in the audience talked about this. And often this is always discussed with different targets and how to reduce emissions. However, this is something already been, settled in the Green Deal by politicians. So I think we need to be more concrete. And one of these things is now there's been a conclusion, of course, correctly so, that in the green transition, we will create a lot of new jobs, but also people will lose their jobs that have previously been employed in other industries. And as a response to this, we create this climate social fund. And it's very common that the European Union creates different funds like these to adapt for negative consequences of policies that we have. However, I think here is very important to have the citizens' perspective. If some of you have ever applied for an EU fund, you know that there's always these criteria of having the gender perspective, to include minorities, to have a green perspective, include all pan-European cooperation, and all these sounds good. But right now we're talking about people, maybe the old miner from the coal mine in the Ruhr Valley. I don't think he will, apply for a fund in this way. And I think we need to make sure that Brussels politicians, such as myself, really have the aspect of the people that we want to affect. And I think a conference like this can make sure that we have our head straight. And that is one issue that I think that we could really need to understand, that we're talking about real people that might not have the same aspect or ideas that we have.
Thank you. Ruben Alexander Schuster.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to touch upon the aspect that the friend from Ioannou raised. I think it's a very good point, and Sara also raised it in her remarks, that I think it is vitally important that we are not thinking about the European idea as an elitist academic movement, so to say. We have to be there where the people are. And this is exactly that we have to reach the coal miner as we have to reach the university professor. And I think this is one of the crucial elements. And I think if we look back, especially if we're talking about Erasmus, which started as an academic program, and I think we all agreed after a short amount of time that we need more, that it cannot be the case that only people with an academic background have the right to connect, that they have the right to exchange. And I think Erasmus Plus and the idea of really opening up that for all levels of, so to say, educational backgrounds is exactly what we need. that we need to be very clear that we transport the benefit of a European integration to all levels. And I think the numbers that the friend from Junge raised, that most of the replies were coming from, so to say, a male majority, this is also something that we must analyze and must understand, and also try to be more attractive, not only for a small, so to say, channel of the population, but to really address the European population as a whole. I think this is one of the key tasks, to really connect also people who do not have, due to their financial, for example, possibilities, the chance to travel so easily, to connect so easily, to participate in many and various exchange programs of universities, that we are trying to get people on board who are really disadvantaged, so to say, due to the fact how they are positioned. I think this is something we should really understand and make the European Union really a people's union, to address everyone who is on all levels active. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben Alexander Schuster. Now, it's difficult to who will begin on this panel. I think Constance, Chris, and Lidia.
First of all, I would like to apologize because the sound in this room is very bad, and I didn't quite catch everything that the delegates have said. So if I misinterpret something that you said, please jump in and correct me. So where should I begin? Our friend from Germany. Obviously, a lot of the discussions in the European Union do not conclude to anything concrete. Okay, this is a problem that we have always seen, and if the model of the European Union continues to work the way it is, you will continue seeing this, especially when we try to generalize the problems and say that we should work more on this issue and being together, and the more you say the word together, the more there's no solution to the problem, unfortunately. So this is why I insist that people who are elected and therefore need to be voted again, and they need to convince the citizens about the importance of their decisions, need to be part of the decisions at the European level much more than they are today. And I'll take the example of YEPP. Through my years in YEPP, I don't know if now it has changed, the funding for organizations like ours was very low. YEPP was receiving annually less funding than the wage of a single MEP. I don't know if this has changed now, but this was the case back in our days. So imagine there is an organization which, by the numbers, since I see you like numbers and it's very good, by the numbers, YEPP is the largest alliance of young politicians in the continent. And every 2 months, now that the pandemic is over, we'll continue bringing together young leaders from all your countries, voicing their ideas and representing representing your people. This, for Europe, is much more important than a program like the one that we're discussing now, or others that conclude to nothing. Because these people that you see here, I don't know how many of you are here for the first time, or if you're regulars to the YEPP events, through the years they will see themselves getting into the European idea, whether they like it or not. They will learn to cooperate with other nations. They will understand that we're not alone in this world, and that the Union, in the end, is of course what I said before, a sum of our flags, but it's also the result of our cooperation. If Greece and Germany, for example, are not able to cooperate, then there is no result at the European level when it comes to decisions we have to take together. So YEPP has helped us in that sense. And the fact that the European Union is choosing, European Commission, not the Union, the Commission is choosing to fund programs like this, the Citizens Dialogue, or other events that result to practically nothing, and are saying no, they're giving negative answers to funding for programs like this, or for your counterparts in the socialist family, or the Greens, or someone else, where young people are able to travel every 2 months and come together and understand what are the European issues, and understand how they can work together, understand how they can bridge the differences. We have to explain to the leaders in Brussels, the European Commission, that this is wrong. And this has to change. Because you are the ones who will go back to your organizations, and if you guys are elected in some years from now in your national parliaments or in the European Parliament like Lidia, you will have this experience with you. And you cannot change this with anything else. Being a part of a trip in Brussels and being a part of a Citizens Dialogue event or the Conference of Europe means nothing compared to events like the ones we're organizing here in YEPP or in the other political families. So to be concrete, we need to give more power to the people who want to be active at the European level. There are some people who don't want to be active. There are some people who don't care about politics, and that's okay. Not everyone in Europe needs to be a politician, but you're interested in politics. And as long as the European Union is not supporting you financially in order to enlarge this group and be more frequent and voice your arguments and your ideas in a more concrete way, then we will continue the same model of generalizing everything. I will not reply to all the questions, so I don't take more.
We don't have the time.
I don't take the time from my friends here. So I will stop here, and if there is something else in the end that remains to be answered, I will.
Okay, Chris, and then Lidia. For Lidia, the last words.
So, yeah, apologies due to time. I will not reply to the individual statements, but I think I will sum it up with what I would like to conclude with. But I will come back to something that Ruben said before, which is we need to defend Europe. And I would like to do that now, because I think it's not being said enough. With all its drawbacks and difficulties and bureaucracies and everything that we have discussed, I think that what we're not saying enough is how lucky we are to live in the European Union and in one of its 27 member states. Because and I think it is a fact, that we enjoy one of the highest standards of living in the world compared to developed countries. And I'm not just comparing it to less developed countries, which is a gift. One that is not enjoyed by many other people, especially our age. And that is the result of everything that we have been talking about before. Because all this back and forth and all this bureaucracy and all this respect to subsidiarity and the processes and the conferences and the reports and the soft programs that I myself accused before, all these results to the European Union and its 27 member states tiptoeing around a very fine balance that is trying to bring the best out of everything. We may not be able to compete with New York when it comes to the capital markets, or to Silicon Valley when it comes to the flexibility and the environment it provides to startups. We may not be able to compete or replicate the Chinese model of manufacturing prowess, but we live in 27 member states, and of course there's variations because it's 27 different member states, but generally we live in countries that provide opportunities to everyone, that provide a social backup to those of us that are not lucky enough, provides very good healthcare compared to other countries, which is a gift that we have seen how important it was, especially during the past 2 years. If you've had COVID in the United States and you were not insured, and it is a very, very, very common thing to not be insured in the United States, you ended up with bills of $100,000 to $600,000, which if you don't have enough money to be insured to begin with, is an incredible amount of money to respond to a pandemic of a flu. So I think that we act a little bit, it's like our friend from Union said before about representation. And you are right about that, and we have seen it in everything that we've done. And it should be the purpose of the People's Party to bring people forward that show more representation, and those who are maybe more reluctant or more focused everywhere else and hear their opinion. But closing, I would like to say that maybe in all its problems, we take all of the benefits for granted. And maybe that's a good thing, because that pushes our union forward into improving furthermore. But let's take a step back, look to our right and look to our left, and understand that we are in a very good position. And maybe that is partly the result of these institutions and these 27 member states and this complicated process that we often accuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Lidia. She is sitting in the middle of both, and already before she tried a little bit to harmonize and to take the equilibrium. So I think she's the right person for the last words of this panel.
Well, to conclude and taking on board all that was said in the panel, I think what Kostas has just mentioned, and Chris as well, it's basically to look for ourselves and see if we are doing the right job. What I mean with this is the following. When I first, when I learned, or where I learned to use the word compromise was in YEPP. And nowadays, as a member of the European Parliament, I use that quite often, because in the several meetings that we have to decide on resolutions or reports, we tend to concede on certain things, to give in on others. And we always use the expression in spirit of compromise. And what we do here, I can tell you, it's not different from what it happens in the European Parliament. So this is just a small example of where we can be the messengers of Europe. What I mean is that what we do here internally, when we have our working groups, when we are discussing our white paper or our resolution, it's the exactly same structure as it happens in the parliament, or what it happens in the council, for example. So I think the main issue, or where we have to work on, is then to pass on the message, the outcome of our work, to our national organizations, because it's there the roots of the membership in YEPP, and it is where we have to work on. And this doesn't have to stop in April next year. My commitment is exactly to go forward to than that. And it's only the way where we can actually set the agenda on the various issues that we want. So my advice here is, like, take advantage of all these connections, bring what we do here every 2 months, 3 months back to your national organizations. And this is how we build the future of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions from the audience. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you, Lidia Pereira, Konstantinos, Kyranakis, Chris Ioannou, Sara Skyttedal, and Ruben Alexander Schuster. Thank you so much for being with here this afternoon. It's 15:53. I think we can close this panel, so you have enough of time to change if you want. Please remember the dress code for going to the heads of state of the Republic of San Marino, to the 2 captains regions, and yes, and we meet on 16:15, 4:15, in the front of